Hello everyone, welcome back to League of Legends Slate Breakdown for betting in DFS on February the 10th. Interesting little 4 game here today, but as we typically do, we will start with recapping yesterday a little bit. KT versus Dom1 ended up getting the KT upset win. So I don't remember which side I ended up going as far as who I picked winning in this. I think I probably still ended up on the Dom1 side, but the bet I ended up leaning towards was the over 2.5, and that cashed anyway. Over in the LPL, or sorry, I guess Gen G also got the 2-0. I was a little bit hesitant on that one, but that was the direction I ended up going. So, um, that's all good and well. And EDG did an NIP that ended up cashing the over 2.5 as well. But again, EDG did end up taking that game. I think NIP are actually looking pretty solid. I'd be interested to see their odds versus LNG in the future. I'd imagine LNG will be like a relatively decent sized favorite. Just from the standing disparity, LNG 4-0, NIP 1-4, but I don't think the gap there is too crazy. So here in a few days, I think that's an interesting spot that's going to be coming up. But nonetheless, GDG, RNG, this one is tough. JDG, I think, are really just that good. I was honestly, as weird as it sounds, I don't think RNG is looking that bad. I don't think they look that bad in this series either. The main problem I just think is their drafting is really, really weird. I don't know what their obsession is with putting Gala on these mages and stuff. I'm not sure why they're so dead set on having him play the Ziggs and things like that. He's like one of the best AD carries in the world, and it feels like you're treating him as if he's a handicap. I don't know what's going on there. I feel like that's setting the team back a lot. So that's something to kind of keep monitor as we're going forward. Um, Once they start treating Gala like a real person, then I think this team is actually going to be like relatively dangerous. But until then, who knows? Um, so yeah, that'll be kind of it. Um, I want to start with lineups today as opposed to looking at odds because I want to guess where these odds are going to be. That's if you guys are kind of longtime viewers of the channel, then you know that's one of my favorite things to do when I'm unsure about games in advance. Look at a matchup and think, what do you think the odds are going to be? And if the odds that you guess are pretty different, then you have yourself the play dictated there for you. There's not much thinking to do. If you have one team as a big favorite and they're not dressed as such, then the play is made for you. Um, I think particularly in this series, RAAL, I'm interested to see this one particularly because I'm really unsure how much respect AL is going to continue to get. Obviously, they've been continuously overvalued as far as the betting market goes. They've, outside of the JDG series, we see them. I think they were favorites, or they were slight under. No, they were slight favorites. I think against LGD. I feel like they were slight favorites against Ultra Prime as well. But they've just continuously looked like such a terrible team. Obviously, Sword Art's Caitlyn, I just regret having seen that. 2-10 map count. They took a game off of LGD, took one off of Ultra Prime. I think there's definitely a case to be had where they can have that scenario here, but I don't know, man. The other side of this one is, of course, RA. They've had a pretty rough go of it as far as their schedule goes. They played LNG, who's on a roll, Top Esports, who's an elite team. They got the win over NIP, and then they got the win over LGD. So a 2-2 like middling record, but again, losing to the likes of LNG and TES is not problematic at all. I think this should be a pretty one-sided towards RA as far as odds go. I feel like minus like 200, minus 230, somewhere in between there. But I don't know where the odds are going to be. I feel like RA should be a big favorite, but who knows? Top Esports Ultra Prime. This one I think is pretty straightforward. I do think obviously TES is going to be a pretty sizable favorite. Ultra Prime just been losing to the bottom of the league. TES is just elite. they've only lost to Weibo, who's another elite team. So TES I think would be like minus 600 or so. I think 2-0 potential definitely very much there. But yeah, that's the direction I'm thinking there. So we'll look at an odds view. Yeah, RA minus 285. That does seem a little steep, to be honest. Top 8 source minus 1,000. That's kind of inconsequential compared to like minus 600 or so. So I feel like that's a little fair. RAAL 285. Obviously, AL is the worst team in the league. There's really not that much of a question of it. I don't even think they've really been even showing signs of life. Even I don't think the kind of magic that was there with AL is kind of gone, despite the roster largely staying the same. I don't think it's necessarily particularly Pin's fault either. Sword Art has just not given this team a chance at all. It's seemingly like becoming a bit more apparent just how impactful Chocho was like on his engaged supports and stuff. I don't think Sword Art is like a terrible option if they do want to put him on like the Leona and stuff like that. But please never have him play Caitlyn again. I know that for sure. The slight caveat here is like maybe if Sword Art ends up playing like a human, they can actually like win a game or two maybe. But I don't know. That feels like a bit of a stretch. As far as like ways to attack it, you're not even really getting anything for TES minus 1.5. RAAL RA minus 1.5 is plus 115. I mean the over 2.5 is 1 plus 120 as well. I think one of those two would be the way to go. The thing that's like interesting there is, of course, AL, like when they do play these lower ish end teams like LGD and Ultra Prime, both of those games went to 3. That's kind of the slight caveat there, but I would slightly lean towards the RA minus 1.5. But I don't particularly love that price. I don't feel super confident in RA's ability to get a 2-0 here, so I don't love that really either. I don't know. I don't really love many options here for that, so that's for sure. Over in the LCK, we do have, I think, a bit more interesting things. We have, of course, Fred at Brion versus Hanwha Life. I don't know. This one's pretty interesting. I think Hanwha are still kind of continuously getting a little bit too much credit here. The kind of caveat, I guess, to that, or the other side of the same coin to this, is Hanwha's played a pretty brutal stretch of teams. So obviously they started out with beating KDF when KDF was still, acclimating themselves to the league. And they go against LSB, who's in that top tier of team. They go and they lose to KT, which was pretty disappointing, but they're looking pretty decent as well. They go against Gen G, top tier team, T1, top tier team. So they've yet to really play these bottom tier teams of, well, at least DRX, KDF, and Nongshim outside of that one KDF series. So I guess they did get a DRX win here as well. So it's like I think they're relatively middling, and I feel like that's the same case for Fred at Brion as well. I think Hanwha Life is getting way too much respect here. I really don't agree with it, especially like Brother Clid. Man, he has been tragic lately. I think the name value for Hanwha is going a little bit too far here. I like the series kind of, I don't know, from kind of both perspectives. Like I feel like this is actually a pretty close series. I don't know. My go-to here is that over 2.5 at plus 120. I feel like this is a pretty close series. I feel like this is two middling table teams. I think I do obviously favor Hanwha probably to take that game 3. I think they are the slightly better team, but I think this is pretty close. Like if I were to, continue to ride that train that I guess has been working for me the past couple days. Obviously not enough sample to definitively say anything, but I'll continue to go with these, over 2.5 when I think this series are a little bit closer than the odds are suggesting. On the flip side, you're getting Fred Brion at plus 1.5, minus 135. I'd kind of just rather take the over 2.5. I know in that scenario, you need both teams to win as opposed to just one. I could see the case, but I'd rather just take the plus money in what I think is going to be a close matchup. That's kind of all it comes down to for me. LSB DRX, I'm honestly pretty shocked at how close these odds are, to be honest. LSB only minus 230. I feel like the LSB has like kind of proven themselves to be like a pretty elite team so far. Ooh, this schedule feature is pretty nice actually. So yeah, so they've, they obviously lost to Gen G, they lost to Dom1, but they beat everyone else. So like they're pretty solidified as like a solid team. And obviously both of these losses are like, yes, they got 2-0'd by Dom1, but going to 3 with Gen G, obviously losing to KDF or like dropping a game to KDF last time out, I think was a little bit more of we're still a little bit underestimating where KDF is. I don't know. I just don't see the same when you look at the DRX side. Obviously they've been getting stomped. Obviously the first week of getting Gen G Dom1 back to back is pretty brutal, but even then they lost to Nong Shim, who's looked like a tragedy. They got that 2-0 over KDF, but again, that's still when KDF was like a challengers team, like not really getting here yet. But obviously the KDF team we know now is a little bit different from that one. They've lost in 3 to Fredit Brion and Hanwha Life. I don't know. Maybe they're getting a bit too much credit. It does feel a bit harsh on them. I don't think they're like quite as bad as their 1-5 record states, but I feel like LSB is like a good team, and I don't feel the same about DRX. So for that, I actually do kind of like the LSB minus 1.5 in this one, plus 135. That's not the greatest number. I don't particularly trust LSB that much. But either way, I just feel like these odds are a little bit crazy. Like I don't have these teams quite as close as minus 230. I don't think that they're particularly that close. And that's really all it comes down to. I don't want to overcomplicate it. So those are the two things I'm looking out for. Oddly enough, both over in the LCK, which is where we've not had much success. You could maybe add on the top esports minus 1.5 to something else and make it okay, but I don't know. It feels odd. I don't know. I don't think you are able to get plus money if you go like LSB moneyline with top esports. That's plus 112. I think that's like a decent, kind of, I don't know, I guess for like lack of better terminology, like a bankroll booster type of bet. I like LSB in that series a good bit. I like Top Esports probably to get that 2-0. I think the disparity between those two teams is pretty large, but I mean, I felt the same for BLGWE, and that one obviously didn't pan out, so who knows, but that's the direction I'm thinking. Something like that. I think that's a decent way to approach it. That's kind of what I'm thinking. As far as DFS goes, it's actually like pretty different from what I'm thinking for the bets. I think obviously the series you want to be a part of, I think, is RAAL, and I think the RA side of that is the direction I'm headed. As painful as it sounds, I just feel like AL has been so bad. It's just so hard to ignore. They've looked lifeless. That's the big difference. Is usually when AL play, the thing that like made me like the team, and the thing that the thing about AL in which that was like an endearing was that they at least tried things. They at least took fights that they shouldn't have. They at least had something to write home about, and they just do not have that right now. They just don't even look like they have a chance when they load in, and that's the difference. Granted, I don't have RA as like that much better than AL. I just feel like they've actually been pretty decent, and I think they're actually a little bit undervalued typically. It's just the only thing that's stopping me from saying go with like an RA minus 1.5 is obviously I don't think the number is that great either. Plus 115, that doesn't feel that great. to have a team like 2-0. I just worry that maybe AL actually look like a competent team for a game. That's kind of the thing. Like I would not be shocked. Like that's what they did in some of these other series, like versus LGD and Ultra Prime. They actually looked like humans for a game, and they won one. So that's what's putting me off from going with the -1.5. But I just feel like the disparity there is a decent amount. So, but that's probably the one you want to go with. That's probably the direction you want to go. TES Ultra Prime, I don't particularly see that being too action packed. Let's see if we look. AL Ultra Prime. In their defeats, they're about the same. Actually, Ultra Prime is slightly better. Obviously, the thing to look out here is combined kills per minute and then the average game time. 0.72 of 33.1. That's 3/4 of 33 is 26, something like that. I guess it should be higher than 28, right? It'd be, I don't know. I'm not gonna try to do mental math right here. Ultra Prime would be slightly the better direction. Let's look at wins for TES and RA. TES does do better. I guess the game time differential there is pretty crazy. We'll do a calculator here. So obviously, like 36.8 times 0.74. So that's like a total on average of like 27 kills in a game. Not kills, but combined kills. So that's both sides. That does account for a lot of deaths as well. So they're not winning in like a huge fashion. They're at like 70 kills and 4 wins. That's 17.5 kills per win. I mean, that's pretty solid, but that's still a lot of action, I guess, both ways. TES is obviously much stronger. They have 120/7. So in kills per win, I guess, wow, that's actually 17.1. So that's actually slightly worse. They are stomping their games, though, 10-minute less of game time. But their combined kills per minute of 27.6 divided by 8.1. Oops. So they're averaging 34 total kills in the game. Obviously, if they kept the pace that they have, I guess you would probably favor TES Ultra Prime. That series, you would want to get probably TES, but you're still looking at double favorites here. As far as like an underdog, like I'm not sure. I think people will probably gravitate to RA or sorry, AL. I'm honestly not sure. Like I don't have an underdog pick I like here, to be honest. I really don't. The only option that I think for as far as underdogs for DraftKings or for DFS and stuff you would look at, I do think AL makes sense. They can get there. I think DRX seems pretty solid as far as like odds to DFS like ownership goes. I'd imagine they'll be like sub 10% or maybe even sub 5% or so, and I think that makes it's a pretty good spot for them. I'm pretty interested in Fredit Brion, but probably only as that secondary stack. I would look at probably getting like an AL or sorry, an RA primary, the top esports primary, and then having it with a Fredit Brion secondary. Again, I don't necessarily love them to win that series, but if they were to do so, I wouldn't be particularly shocked. And again, for all the same reasonings I talked about that team earlier, I would kind of reapply it here. I feel like Fredit Brion, I just think that series is closer. I would not be shocked if they won that series. So maybe they take that third game, and if they're the only underdog that wins a series, then they're probably going to need them. So I guess for that reason, that's kind of the only spot that I do like personally. But again, if you liked DRX, I don't think you're crazy. If you liked AL, you're probably a little crazy. But again, from a pure kind of leverage, I guess, standpoint, like if you need underdogs, it wouldn't be the worst spot. Like we've definitely seen AL do the unexpected. They pull out victories seemingly from nowhere all the time. So if that's the direction you want to go, that makes sense. But I personally just cannot justify looking at this team anymore. So yeah, I think that'll be it for me today. Check the pricing real quick. Make sure nothing's too crazy. Are LSB actually that cheap as players? LSB's players are pretty cheap actually. Actually, RA's players are pretty cheap. So maybe looking to avoid the that's a weird top lane situation there for pricing. I don't know. Keep an eye out for. I mean, you could definitely make some different lineups and stuff, but I don't know. Yeah, I think kind of summed up everything pretty well. I guess kind of recap. I like Frederick Brion, I guess, as that dart throw, I guess, for DK and DFS, but I don't love the DFS slate really at all. I don't like the betting slate too much either. Some of the things that did catch my eye were maybe over 2.5 in Hanwha Frederick Brion. Maybe Toppy Sports -1.5, but you'd kind of have to put that with something else to get hopefully to like some plus money. Maybe LSB -1.5. I like that as well. So those two LCK ones I think are a good direction. Again, if you wanted to feel a little bit more confident and go with like the RA -1.5, I think it's fair. I think the skill disparity is there, but who knows? Like that one's just a little bit hard to trust. I don't think RA is quite that good, and I don't know. AL sometimes do have the potential, so I don't feel confident enough to like say that I love that one a lot, but you know that would be like a fourth thing to add if you wanted to, if you're feeling particularly bold, I guess. So that's going to be the direction I'm headed tonight. I will thank you guys all for tuning in. I will see you guys all again tomorrow. And yeah, that'll be it for me.